This is the Comics Alternative Interviews, a conversation with Ryan O'Sullivan and Plaid Klaus. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews. I'm Derek.
And I'm Sean. And we're two guys with advanced degrees talking with creators about their work.
That's right. And on this interview episode, Sean and I have the pleasure of talking with Ryan O'Sullivan and Plaid Klaus. Their first issue of the new series Void Trip comes out from Image Comics on November 22nd, and we have a great time talking with them about this new series as well as their previous work together, Turncoat. But before we get to that conversation, we want to let all of you know that this episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts can be anywhere from 20 to 35% off of the cover price, and every single month you're going to find some incredible specials. Sometimes those specials could be as much as 45% off of the cover price, sometimes 50% off of the cover, but every now and again, you can find discounts that are more impressive than that.
And since we're talking about Void Trip with Ryan and Klaus, you know, they've got Void Trip number 3 available right now. You can pre-order that, $2.39. That's 40% off the cover price, as well as getting in whatever variety of bundles from Marvel and DC and Valiant and other publishers. Save even more money than that 40% discount. So lots of great stuff to take advantage of there.
That's right. You know, whether you like to get specials on individual issues of comic books or bundled discounts, you can't beat the prices at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com. They will take care of all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your titles there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that Sean and Derek sent you. Sean, this was a fun conversation that we had with Ryan and Klaus, and This is actually the very first time that you and I have done a longer sustained interview together.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do this one with you because you and I discussed their first really big work together, Turncoat, about a year and a half ago on the webcomic show.
Yeah, and we both really enjoyed that series. I really liked that a lot. And what I was enjoyed about this too is that these guys are really true creators in the sense that, you know, that, and we talk about this a little bit with them, but you know, they start off with this really good idea on upending the superhero narrative with Turncoat. But then Void Trip here comes in. I mean, it's still got the same style and sensibility, but a completely different genre, completely different thematic ideas behind it. And I think there's a lot that can be said for somebody who's pushing themselves creatively like that all the time.
Exactly. And, you know, one other common ground between Turncoat and then this new series from Image, Void Trip, is the humor that's embedded in their narrative. But at the same time, both titles are dealing with rather weighty, serious issues.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I had said that, you know, everybody gets away happy and scot-free. No, we're seeing people killed here. They doesn't get much weightier than that. So, I think actually it was Ryan at some point says in our discussion something to the effect of that you have to laugh at those kind of situations because otherwise you go crazy.
That's right. Well, let's go ahead and listen to that conversation now. We're pleased to have on the Comics Alternative Ryan O'Sullivan and Plaid Klaus. They are the creative team behind the new Image Comics series, Void Trip, the first issue of which comes out next week on November 22nd. Ryan, Klaus, welcome to the Comics Alternative.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
You know, this is not the first time that we have mentioned your names on this podcast, because about a year and a half ago, this was back in, late winter, early spring of 2016, Sean and I discussed your, at the time, very recently completed webcomic, Turncoat, and we were both excited to hear that the two of you got together again, this time for a print publication, Void Trip. So this is great news. We appreciate you talking to us about this. And maybe we can get started with you guys introducing our listeners to what Void Trip is all about.
Sure. I mean, Void Trip, to give you the elevator pitch, it's about the last two humans left alive on an intergalactic road trip through the stars, looking for the promised land of Euphoria, which is this planet, this euphoric planet, including the name, where all the hippies from around the universe just come together. And with our two lead characters being an absolute pair of space cadets, it's where they want to go and live out their days. It's sort of a one part myth, one part actual place. However, as with all good road trip stories, they're being followed by someone bad, and we don't really know much about this bad person other than that he is all white, carrying guns, and seems to be absolutely indestructible. I mean, that's fair, wouldn't you say, Klaus?
Yeah, it's about tripping in space and trying to outrun the inevitable void of existential dread. So
straight up.
Now,
was the first time the two of you worked together on Turncoat, or was there something previous to that I'm not aware of?
Well, technically, yes.
That was the first.
We did a one-pager for the back of Limbo from Image Comics, didn't we?
Yeah. Little silly. What was the...
Limbo was a comic by
name?
Dan Waters and Casper Wingard, and they asked us, because they're friends of ours, they asked us to do a one-page comic one-page comic in the back of, I think it was issue 4. It was like a one-page done in the style of an advert, I think.
It was like a PSA for how to use a sword. It was kids, and I think it was a dark comedy. Basically, by the end of it, the kids accidentally one of them killed the other one with a sword, and he was like, don't tell your parents, they're the ones that find you.
That's
hence
interesting.
the need for a PSA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a play on exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because we reviewed Limbo on the Comics Alternative, I guess it was last year, maybe the year before, whenever the trade came out. So we didn't discuss the individual issues of Limbo, but just the trade. And at least from the digital copy that I received, I don't remember there being any backup stories. Maybe there was, and I'm just forgetting.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, that book's good enough on its own. It's an
full-on Blade Runner Lynch.
But yeah, it was in the singles.
Crazy book. But that was technically when we first came together. But I think our first main big thing we did was Turncoat, because that was something like 164 pages, webcomic turned graphic novel through Kickstarter. It was, they always say make sure your first comic is small to make sure you can do it. We completely didn't follow that advice. maybe we should have. I don't know, but it's a beast.
Well, now that was what I found interesting. I know, like Derek said, we both like Turncoat a lot. But what I think is interesting is then that you're switching gears from that so radically. That was a superhero narrative, although obviously turning a lot of things, turning a lot of the tropes on its head. And then this is more Void Trip is more kind of straight up sci-fi kind of action, and like you said, kind of in a road trip kind of way. So is that just something that you're playing with different genres deliberately, or just that's just kind of a natural extension of what you're trying to do, or what are you guys working on in terms of the genre mashup? Usually you expect a creator to at least kind of focus a little bit more on a specific theme.
Yeah, no, I think artists always, like a true artist, is always challenging themselves and sort of reinventing themselves and looking for new territory to sort of like branch out into. Like if you look at David Bowie, he had multiple phases of who he was. He was the White Duke, he was Starman, he was Ziggy Stardust. And he's always looking for that next challenge. I feel like it's the same way when we work on the project. We finished Turncoat. We actually did it as like an homage to superheroes for different reasons. For me, I'm not a huge fan of superhero stuff. Like there's some good stuff out there, but there's a lot that's been played out. And so kills superheroes for a living. And so it was like this dark comedy. So I had a lot of fun with that. And then Void Trip was sort of, like you said, a completely different direction. But in the same vein of the style that Ryan and I create, which is sort of this like dark cartoon humor. And our next project takes a completely different turn as well. So we're always looking for like new avenues. We don't want to stay too stagnant in one vein.
Well, as Sean pointed out, your previous work together, Turncoat, is kind of a satiric take on the superhero genre. As much as I enjoyed and appreciated what you did in Turncoat, what I liked even more was not so much that it was kind of a twist on the superhero genre, but that it was a humorous comic. And we've only seen the first issue of what will be 5 issues, I guess, in the Void Trip series. But already I see the humor that you guys embedded in Turncoat in this first issue of Void Trip. And so I see it more as, regardless of whether superhero or sci-fi, from what I'm seeing of your work, I would primarily categorize it as humor and other things as well.
Yeah,
I would say that. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, well.
I would say this.
No, okay, Klaus. You know what, Klaus? You go next.
I was just going to say the shadowy.
British people a lot. We say, no, you, no, please, no, you, no, you, don't, no, you next. So,
I was just going to say this shadowy veil that goes over Turncoat, it looms a little darker in Void Trip. But go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is not to sort of sound wanky by talking about voice, but I think that our collective sensibilities, me and Klaus together, is evolving as we are becoming a more solid thing every book we do. So like we saw it like start to germinate in Turncoat, and now with Void Trip it's becoming the same thing. And the way I describe it is we're interested in looking at the sort of existentially dreadful parts of life, the bits that could theoretically be absolutely crushing to a person, and then laugh at it. I think that's sort of how we're going. So as much as we are not trying to be put in too many boxes in terms of what genre we work in or what have you, we're definitely approaching everything with the exact same tone. So I like to think that we're building up work that, if people like one of those books, they'll like all of them. But primarily we're doing it because these are things we're interested in talking about. We don't want to just be comedy people, because there's a lot of funny books out there already. We don't just want to be existential, taking ourselves super seriously types. It's more a case of, have you considered that life is pure suffering, but also, look, this is funny.
Yeah, I think the closest comparison would be something like Rick and Morty, which it's not exactly in that same vein. It's a little less cartoon, a little less humor from time to time, but just the idea of like you can say things that are really philosophical, intellectual, without having to be so serious about it and like force down the throat of the reader the message you want to convey. Instead you can kind of seduce them. Mm-hmm. They say there's 2 ways to convince someone of something. You can either you can force it upon them, or you can make it so appealing that they crave it. So I think we kind of try to make this kind of humorous take on stuff, and then we kind of bury inside this.
Yeah, we lure them in with the jokes at the start, and then in the latter issues, that's when we start, crushing their
exactly. Yeah.
Now you guys alluded to kind of that developing relationship you have as creators. So how does that work when you're building the story then? Are you just kind of sitting down and brainstorming, or do you work out, traditional full script first and then start making modifications there? How does that relationship work then?
Well, it works out differently with Turncoat. Turncoat, me and Klaus didn't really know each other, so it was a case of me just writing scripts, giving them to him, and he drew them. And then he obviously would decide the entire aesthetic of it, and then we'd bounce back and forth in terms of how the end comic looked. Some of that was me changing the writing, some of that was him changing the art. But with Void Trip, because we'd already done a massive graphic novel together, and we had an understanding of each other's sensibilities. That was a lot more collaborative in the early stages when we were sort of when we came up with the idea together. A mixture of some sketches that Klaus had been doing on Facebook of sort of drifter space hobos, and I've been reading a lot of countercultural American literature and wanted to do something that was in that vein. We came together, we came up with this idea ourselves. And I think in the early days when I was putting it together, Klaus was a lot more like a co-writer or an editor, in that he wasn't an artist just waiting for me to give him something. He was like getting involved and saying, have you considered this, have you tried this? So I'd plot it out, I'd do an outline, pass it over to him, he'd give me comments, we'd have a Skype session. The first scene in Void Trip issue 1 where the two characters are stealing fuel, that was entirely Klaus's idea. Because I wanted to start with them, because of the last two humans left alive, I thought what would be cool is if we started with them leaving Earth or whatever. And Klaus was like, nah, man, start in the middle of the story, have them stealing fuel, just jump straight in. I was like, that's exactly the sort of advice you're supposed to know as a writer. I was like, okay, great, yes, silence artist, I will do that now.
I mean, Ryan's being humble. Basically, when he comes to me with a plotted out script, it's almost all there. Anything I'm doing to help out typically is adding all these little detailed layers on top, and I'll let my creative mind go and really dig into the imaginary realm of what the story is, and I'll just come up with these kind of crazy ideas. So for the AI, to sort of make him a hologram, so that he can kind of shapeshift and change depending on what kind of character he is in the moment, or how he's supposed to be conveyed. So he wears his emotions literally in how he shapeshifts. And then when Ryan heard that, he ran with it and he started using it in really interesting ways within the script. And there's all these little moments that happen when you work creatively like that. So it's really fun because he comes with this thing pretty fully formed, and it gives me the ability to not have to sometimes you get a script from a writer and you have to help mold it and shape it to make it work. And I didn't have to do any of that with Ryan's scripts because they're so well formed. So I get it to just play on top of what's already there, and then as we throw ideas back and forth, it grows and grows and becomes a more unique thing.
And we should mention
that's for the sorry, just jump in. That was for the scripts. I mean, my scripts are full script all the way. Just with the earlier stuff we did before that, when we're outlining, that was very much together. That's what I was mentioning before.
Right.
So I wasn't saying that I don't write Klaus scripts. I just give him a vague idea. I definitely write a script.
Yeah, and we should mention that the character AI that you refer to, Klaus, appears at the very end of this first issue. So we'll see some of this transformation you referred to in the later issues.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by what you're describing as what I guess is the genesis of Void Trip, that it's a combination of Klaus's sketches of space hobos and then Ryan, your readings in countercultural issues around the time. And in fact, I think at one point in this first issue, our protagonists, and I can't remember if it's Anna or Gabe, refer to themselves as space hobos, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that was originally the title of the book, but we thought if you put the word hobo in the title of a book, people might not buy it. And Klaus actually came up with the name Void Trip as well, which is really, really bugs me, because we sat down on Skype to sort of come up with a new name, and I was like, what have we got? And I was like, I'll let him go first, because I've probably got mine are great, I'm alright. So Klaus, tell me what you've got. And he's like,
I just gave him one name. I was like,
and he's like, it had 4, I think, different meanings. It's a play on words. Yep. It's they're tripping through space, but it's also a trip. They're going through the void, but it might also be pointless. So it had all these different ways of interpreting it. I looked down at my list and it was Space Journey Quest. It's absolute crap. Okay, let's just go with that. Let's not have any conversation.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about the genesis of the thing is there's a parable about 3 blind men trying to describe an elephant, and one person says, describing the trunk and it's long and leathery, and the other's describing the tail, it's thin, and the other one's saying, oh, it's this big surface. And I think when we're working on a story, we come at it from very different angles, because we have, we both understand each other's philosophies, but we also have different approaches to life and how we interpret life and the meaning of life and stuff. And we talk about it a lot. And so when we're excavating the story itself, I'll be like, no, it's about this, man, and Ryan will add his layer. And so I think that's the most enjoyable thing, is to actually we're developing and interpreting our story's meaning as we're sort of generating it together.
I think it's funny. I want to make an observation. I think that in terms of comics culture, we are on the cusp of a new movement, and that is comics about hobos in one form or another. Because earlier this year, Kyle Stark started his new series, Rock Candy Mountain, also an Image title, and it's all about hobos. And so now we have Void Trip, which in many ways is about, as you guys have put it, space hobos. So this could be, I don't know, maybe the hobo renaissance
Drifters
in
out there
comics.
too. Drifters out there, but that's been out for a few years.
A friend of mine, Michael Morrissey, has just announced his new Vault book, which is called Wasted Space, about sort of these. I don't know what it's about yet, but it looks like it's about sort of drunken people in space. So,
well, one thing I'll say is like a good artist, good writers, like you're sort of tapping into whatever is in the zeitgeist, and intentionally or unintentionally, you just sort of like you're downloading whatever's out there. And I guess this sort of just, we stumbled into this we weren't like trying to say, well, it's the next big thing, but it could be something that's just kind of in the air for sure.
Now, okay, so let me change gears a little bit. I'm curious about this, particularly, and you mentioned that you both come at life in general from very different perspectives. And there's obviously a lot of that between Anna and Gabe, too, in the story. Is they're two very different people in a lot of respects, and getting into arguments about, how even they should go about this journey and all whatever. Yeah. So how much of your kind of interrelationship like that is informed in the story? Is it just kind of more of a buddy cop kind of type of situation, or are you deliberately saying, oh, you know what, we actually had this conversation, let me put that in?
I don't think we've had these conversations really. So I'm very careful when I'm doing stuff not to put myself in as a character. My ideas bleed into bloody everything because I'm vain, but I try not to do the whole author insert thing. But no, I think Anna and Gabe are almost like the same person, but Anna being the young idealist and Gabe being that same person but older and a little bit more jaded with the world. So I think that because the whole sort of premise of Void Trip is how can you be free in a universe that seeks to limit you, and so I like the idea of having one person who's young that didn't realise the universe can limit you, and an old person who has been around the block does know that that's the case. So the dichotomy between the two of them is the foundation of it, and I don't think that's built on me and Klaus specifically because
I think it's like
I tried to make their relationship a little bit more all-encompassing, so that as many people as possible could relate to them. So I suppose you could relate me and Klaus to them then if I've done a good job.
Yeah, I mean, as Ryan describes, like that spectrum, they're like the archetypes on opposite sides. But I think we all sort of go through life in a sort of fractal spiral between those two modalities. I mean, some days you wake up and life is wonderful, and there is lots to be had, lots of awesome things to be had. And sometimes you wake up and there's a void staring you in the face. I don't think anyone goes through life as just Anna or just Gabe, but it's nice to see them in this scenario in those different stages and sort of explore, well, what does that mean about life? If like we can have those two experiences separately, which one's, is one correct? That's the whole struggle with their characters is like, can you be free? Can you be free? Can you have the experience you want? Or is the universe going to stop you? Are the rules that are in place, and inevitably the big stopping force, obviously death, as seen through the metaphor of the villain, is constantly looming and chasing over you. I don't know if Ryan did this intentionally, but it's kind of like a callback to The Seventh Seal. You guys seen that movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's one of my favorites. But it's like this. It's this constant thing that's looming over them. And then the nice thing too, narratively, it's like the reader knows more about what's happening with him and how close his approach is than they do. So it's almost a Shakespearean, nod to the reader in every issue.
Wow! So you got a reference right there to Shakespeare, Ingmar Bergman. Is there a white whale in there somewhere?
Is there a white whale? Yes. Moby Dick was a huge influence on this. Except rather than the monomania of Ahab chasing the whale, in Void Trip, we've got the whale itself with monomania chasing our heroes. So yeah, I mean, Cormac McCarthy and Melville were huge influences on this. That ties in a bit with you don't see much of it in the first issue, but it picks up a lot more later on. The style of dialogue of the villain, he's very much a sort of Anton Chigurh, Cormac McCarthy kind of character, because we needed something that offset the fact our characters, Anna and Gabe, sort of talked in that millennial voice, "Hey man, what's up, dude?" sort of thing. We needed a character to offset that, so the whole comic didn't seem a little bit too, I don't know, hippie-ish, even though it's
juvenile. Yeah,
juvenile is supposed to be the right word. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the differences between your two protagonists, Anna and Gabe. In terms of age. Another thing I really appreciate this, and I guess this figures into the age difference between the two. Anna is the one who is, I guess, the more overt stoner character. Devil may care, does whatever she wants. And I was really taken by, we're I think 6 pages into this first issue. And, after they got the gas that they were after, Gabe is worrying. He says, we got to look after each other out here, which is, what the trucker, the space trucker had mentioned to them. And then he feels guilty. He says, we're bad people. But then Anna tells him, no, Gabe, we're vagabonds, 2 crazy cats on the road to euphoria. And so, I mean, I love this dynamic that you have going on between these two characters, in that you have a difference in life experience, but also in terms of worldview. And where they come together is something we haven't even mentioned yet, and that is through this, I don't know if we want to call it a drug or some kind of substance called fruit, F-R-O-O-T.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, these characters really are people, like, I've met these people before. Like, I have an older relative who's been through the 70s and experienced that period and saw the positives and the negatives and knows what human nature is underlying everything, and that you can't just escape and things aren't going to always be okay. But I also, through college, I knew the star child, the young person who's like sure that the whole world can be fixed if you just take enough drugs. So like these are real personas in the world, and I feel like that's what gives them some of that endearing quality.
Yeah, and Anna is wearing a cap that has the word fruit, F-R-O-O-T, on it. So, if there was any question as to who is the major stoner of the two,
Right.
But yeah, the concept between fruit was that we wanted something that was allowed us to tell a drug story without us really using drugs, because I didn't want to glamorize drug use, considering how many lives it can destroy, but at the same time, it is also something that enriches a lot of lives. So I wanted to have a politically neutral position, but I'd be able to use it narratively in a way that was positive. I think we pulled it off.
Now, with regard to how much does the fruit actually carry in through, like the rest of the story? Where obviously we've only read the 1 issue so far, and obviously it's a big part, and I think it does a good job of, showing us where Anna and Gabe are as individuals. But as you just said, a lot of drug use can really kind of screw you up and kind of distort your distort you from the what you're trying to get done, even if you are trying to get something done, like get to euphoria here or something like that. So does that continue to play a major role throughout the rest of the story here? Or
I think
yes and no, I guess. It does.
We get into Anna's headspace. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There's a little delay, I think, so I'll keep talking over you, man. No, don't think I'll skip it.
No, I was going to say Ryan did a really interesting thing where he used the fruit space as like Anna's headspace. So like we really she can get into these like sort of inner monologues with in the fruit world, but we also use it to sort of set the tone of the scenes to come as like these foreshadows. I mean, visually we can go anywhere in these psychedelic fruit spaces.
Right.
So we got to use that as like a narrative element within the story, which became really interesting. And then, but like I said, also there's a character within the fruit world that becomes like has this inner dialogue with Anna. So it's a way, again, it's a tool to let the reader know a little bit more about this character and what they're going through, which I thought was really clever.
Now you mentioned
she has a mentor, and I think it's in the second issue.
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted to spoil it, but yeah.
Okay, well, she gets this sentient fruit, and he claims to be her mentor, and she just absolutely ignores him. It's so good.
It's so good. So good.
You mentioned this fruit world. One of the things that I really enjoyed with this first issue is, Anna and Gabe are in some kind of bar club area, and their approach to, and I don't know if we know this guy's name, but it's the guy whose face looks like a squid.
Hitch.
Hitch, okay, Hitch. And they convince him to take one of these fruits. And
spoilers.
No. I was going to say that when he trips, your art style, Klaus, radically changes to where it becomes much more cartoony. And I mean, I don't want to give away what happens during this trip, but just the art style dramatically shifts. So I'm wondering, kind of to piggyback on what Sean was asking, if we're going to see more emphasis in one form or another on fruit in future issues, will we see this shift in art style from something a little more, I guess we could call it realistic, to kind of the cartooniness of the fruit world?
So again, like the fruit world itself goes in different places, and my thought with Hitch is that like it's his first encounter with it, so it's this completely foreign experience. I did want, like, I actually switched art styles a bit to make it just lean into the toon a little bit, like toon element a little bit heavier, and then but with Anna's, like, she's a little more comfortable in these environments, so for her it's just almost like a parallel of our landscape, only in these bizarre environments. So yeah, I mean, I basically treated it per scene. There's not like one part of it too is like with psychedelics. I don't know if you're experienced as the Jimmy but like it's different from person to person. There's not like one world that everyone travels into. So like each person kind of would get their own fruit world, essentially.
Well, where did you come up with the idea of fruit?
Fruit was, we were thinking we were going to try and do an all-ages drug story about people who got high on fruit and had sugar highs because they felt hyper. And then, after we sort of kept that in, and then after a while we were like, well, some of the other elements in the story made this had to be a mature story. And obviously Image, we're not smart enough to sneak something like that past Image. So by that point we'd sort of fallen in love with the concept of fruit anyway, so we kept it in.
But it's nice I can show like the first issue for the most part to like, nieces and nephews. And there's, other than maybe one page, there's nothing there that's going to scare them. But then by the time we get to later issues, not so much.
Yeah, they can read that when they're older.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is interesting because just recently I had the pleasure of interviewing Mark Voger on this podcast because he just this week came out with a book from Tomorrow's Publishing called Groovy, and it's all about how groovy culture found its way into popular culture, even for kids, right? So you eventually have what became in the late 60s and in early 70s, the manifestation of groovy culture and psychedelia in shows like the Banana Splits, even, the Monkees television program from the mid to late 1960s, into, let's say, the 1970s with the Partridge Family. And so this idea of an all-age psychedelic drug narrative is not that far off base from what actually happened in the 60s and 70s.
That's true, man. If you want to take a turn, I mean, that time period kind of molded and shaped what American culture is today. And I think it's kind of phasing back in. There's sort of like this new movement with, like, you talk to most people, they know what Burning Man is. And Burning Man is essentially a drug-fueled concept, which was, it started off as like these people deciding they wanted to have a completely free economy, which is a complete, stoner idea. We can have a whole economy that doesn't involve currency, but it merged into this like huge art festival with all these like engineers building these huge constructs. And, I think it's a range now of people who go just to do the artistic engineering and hang out and live free, and there are people doing drugs and all this mix of things. But you see that more so in like the late I guess 2000s. I hate to say 2010, but MGMT, the band, like there's these little kind of things that are bleeding into the culture again that come from psychedelia. And I don't know if you've heard Rick Doblin. He works with MAPS. He's like trying to introduce MDMA to help with post-traumatic stress, and like they're trying to legalize psilocybin to help with similar problems people are having. And there is this like kind of wave moving back in. I think the wave that came in the 60s and 70s was a little too strong. Like it was a juvenile way of looking at it. It was an Anna perspective of like, well, if everyone just gets loaded, will society be better? But I think now people are being a little more reserved, having seen the results of that, and they recognize that like, well, these things are complex, but given the right conditions and environments, they can actually create these heightened experiences that can shift an entire civilization. I mean, if you look at the things that are happening with MAPS and some of the other, some people don't even talk about their experiences, but they've had them and they've made them like want to actually move society in a more positive way. But definitely, something like Rick or Morty and a lot of these other cartoon shows are, at the very least influenced by people smoking pot and like having crazy ideas, and then those crazy ideas build and they get into the zeitgeist and it becomes part of culture in itself. So yeah, I definitely think there's another wave coming.
So by issue 5, then I think we can expect like a Steve Ditko style Doctor Strange backgrounds going on in this. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. In
some parts, yeah. I mean, we didn't want to be so psychedelic. The comic became a piece of art. It's a story first, but we not the Ditko stuff wasn't, but you get the drift. I want something that's like we want a strong story in there too, because as I said, there's a lot of existential dread in this, and if we played too far into the psychedelics, some of that might be lost. So it's a very careful balancing act.
In the book, it's a narrative tool, I think, more than anything else. Ryan uses it very intelligently to drive the story. The story is what's first, but it's fun to talk about this stuff. But it's not like the goal of the book has really anything to do with psychedelics. To be honest, It's just one of the many elements inside of it.
And you know what? Actually, speaking of that as just an element, there's a small bit in here that I'm curious to know if it's something that we'll see thematically through the rest of the series or not. Just the fact that they're pulled over at one point by the police. And there's that dealing with, the man, the authority figure and that kind of thing. The story in issue 1 is largely set up around this character in white trying to kill them or trying to get to them. But then there's because you've already introduced that, is that police faction then also a story element? Is that we're also, they're fighting the existential dread on one side and the law and order on the other side?
Oh yeah, the police come into it. Can't spoil any more than that. But you can't have a road trip story without the police.
Okay,
that's right.
Now, I'm assuming that the 5-issue story arc you've already completed it. Is that correct?
You still done, yeah.
Okay, I was wondering because I noticed on the Image Comics website, specifically your page that they have set up for Void Trip, they list the cover and the pub date for Void Trip issue 2 and then for issue 3. So that's why I was wondering if everything is absolutely complete, that you have no question whatsoever where this 5-issue narrative arc will end.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think 4 is up there too. Yeah, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I think the only reason it's not up there is it's not been listed yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything's fully planned out, plotted.
Now, one of the things that we see constantly with Image is that creators will project, let's say, an initial story arc of 4 to 5 issues, see how that sells and what kind of audience response they get, and then later make a decision if they want to continue that series into another narrative arc, and then just see how long that they can sustain that. Can you tell us at this point if you have any, if not intention, then maybe desire to continue Void Trip in one form or another after issue number 5?
I think from my perspective, when you're putting stuff together, especially at the early start of your career, like I am, and like Klaus is as well, I think it's fair to say, we want to do as many things as possible, and we didn't carry on Turncoat, we jumped straight into a new thing. I'd like to do that again, so I like to have the sort of the brain muscle to be able to constantly come up with new things rather than find one thing that works and carry it on past its prime. Plus, Void Trip is very much a story with a definitive end to it. We could carry it on. I've got my ego in the back of my head saying, no, it's a challenge as a writer to try and carry on past the ending. You definitely shouldn't. Be the one person that makes season 2 a good season. I don't call comic seasons. I was just referencing television there. But yeah, I think we're done with issue 5. If it does gangbusters, and if we get a real sort of bolt of lightning piece of sort of inspiration on how we could continue, then yeah. But I think we're done with 5, and then we'll be looking at what.
I think we're done. I mean, Ryan and I are on 100% the same page. If you try to pick the sequel after the fact, I mean, sometimes you'll see good trilogies that were sort of planned loosely to continue to extend, but look no further than the second season of Stranger Things, which, in my opinion, is starting to jump the shark. When the first season seemed perfect as it was, as the thing it was packaged. But so, I mean, especially creatively as an artist, comics take a long time. And me too, I'm a bit of a perfectionist or control freak, however you want to label it. So I want to do the pencils, inks, and the colors. I want to control it. So it's like a painting start to finish from. And to do that, it takes a lot of time. So, if I were to do an extended series, it would pretty much engulf my life. And since I don't have a team of artists, it would be a slow process. It's not like the thing would pace quickly. So instead, Ryan and I talk about this. I like the idea of building a complete story, start to finish, and then that out as like a graphic novel package. Now, I do think we could plan something that maybe was a little bit more long form. Maybe 2 volumes. 3 would be stretching it, but I like the idea that you create something this quickly and you just trust that it's perfect in itself. There's no need to continue it, and especially if the main reason you're continuing it is because this thing sold well. I think you're doing a disservice to the art form or the piece itself. And I'm trusting that audiences will, if they dig Void Trip, they recognize that it's because it's a teamwork project of Ryan and I, and if we produce another book, it's going to be equally as enjoyable. Even if you fell in love with the characters, we're going to create new characters that are just as enjoyable. So
have you guys started talking about that then? So what would be next? And anything you can relay at this point, or the idea is still a little too vague?
The only thing I can mention is that I named it, and I'm really happy about that. So that's all I can mention.
Well, tell us. I mean, how did you guys begin working together? How did you find one another?
I found. Sure. I went. I had, as I said, for Turncoat, that was a concept I'd sort of come up with by myself in terms of the story, and then I went and found Klaus on a comic forum called Comic Experience, which is sort of an online forum where you pay to be a member and you get to meet other industry people on the up. And we were both sort of very similar stages of our careers. We'd done a few smaller comics, each of us, but nothing long. And then I just sent Klaus an email saying, "Hey, I like your stuff. Here's my idea," and we took it from there. Really, it seemed to just go really well.
Yeah, and actually, Ryan was one of the first people I met in the field that was as into the business side of it as he is the creative side. So we were both on point with that. And one of my problems with comics in general is it's a very razor thin market, and you really have to understand how it all works to make it work. And we started talking creatively, and I was like, oh, this is a great match. But on top of that, we started talking, on the business side and how the releases are going to work and everything else. And I was like, oh man, this is great because I finally met someone that's as passionate about both aspects.
Yeah, that is rare.
Yep.
So
the trick is to not let them bleed into each other, I think.
That's true.
Yeah.
Keep them separate.
So that since Turncoat then was basically, you like we discussed earlier, that was a webcomic, then Kickstartered that. This is starting right off with Image then. Is that is that part of this kind of a broader business plan that you're trying to get to develop in a certain way, or a certain publisher, or that kind of thing? Or
no, absolutely. I mean, I had the foresight to we wanted to make this book, and I knew it was going to be good. And I went out and actually reached out to past business associates, and I was able to get just a small loan from some people I really trusted, who believed in me and believed in. And so we were like, okay, we're going to make this book. If nothing else, we'll kickstart it. We'll repay the investors. Yeah. Everything's good. And we talked about, well, what about publishers? And we talked about, the page rates a lot of these places give, and the percentages and the royalties. We're just like, a lot of them want to keep the ownership of the content. Mm-hmm. And we were like, well, Image sounds like the only place to go with this kind of thing, especially if we have the backing to make it and get it made, because that's the hardest thing for a lot of new creators with image books. Is you have to wait until the checks roll in, which wasn't going to be a problem. So we approached them, and also their name, as carries a lot of sway, and
sure,
they just produce really good work. So we wanted to be kind of in the mix of those other talented creators and strong books. So it was definitely planned from the beginning. I don't think we were for this book any other publishers. It just happened to be the first I ever pitched was to Image, and just the first book I ever pitched happened to get picked up, which was pretty amazing. But we were both pretty confident in it going in, so it worked out well.
So
we had a lot of friends that had books in Image that were advising us on how to approach. So credit to them as well.
Yep.
So whatever, I know you're not able to really talk about the next project yet, but is that something then that you would consider going back to Image for, or is not in their wheelhouse, or some reason?
I think we're too early. Yeah, the same way we're too early creatively to kind of start talking about things, and it's the same way in the business side. I mean, wouldn't you say, Ryan?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, we've got to sort of take a look at. Here's the thing: what Image publish now and what they publish in 6 months might not be the same thing. So we'd have to look once we've got the thing in a position where we want to approach publishers. We'd have to look at the output of every publisher and see, are they a good match for us business-wise, and is their line or their perspective line for next year or even the year after, are we a good fit with any of that? And if the answer is no, we may go back and kickstart it. But I think at this stage we're more likely than not going to approach a publisher to put the book out, because working with Image on this has been great. The industry reach. They've been amazing. They really are great.
Well, and along with this, I mean, do you also plan not to go the route of webcomic first for your future project or two, your next one or two?
It's hard to say for the next one or two. I don't think for this one. I could see down the road going back to that. We really enjoyed about that. Getting the thing, you're getting all this feedback from the fans, which was really. It was enjoyable, but it also I don't know, it fueled things in, and you kind of tease things in from what fans were saying, add little bits, and one of the things I love doing, working on the art on a book at any point is putting Easter eggs in. It's my favorite thing, to just decorate the background to see who's looking. But yeah, I could see us doing that eventually. I don't know. We haven't really talked enough about the plans. The next book I don't think.
As I've said, we're a creative duo, and I want to keep making books with Klaus as long as we're both able to.
Yeah.
And I do notice that the diet market seems to be getting progressively less and less healthy. So, and as the internet becomes more and more of the place for creators to control their own platform, I like the idea of having an online platform that is neutral to anything other than me and Klaus, where we can monetize it. So I think at some point in the future we might go back, but for the next few years I'll definitely be playing in the diet market with traditional publishers, building up our sort of brand name, to put a horrible sleazy business term on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now we should let our listeners know that around the beginning part of March of last year, around the time that you were wrapping up the webcomic Turncoat, you had a Kickstarter campaign, a very successful one, and backers who got a physical copy of the book were able to get a hardbound edition of Turncoat. Since then, I think later in the year, you guys came out with a softcover edition of Turncoat. So if our listeners want to find out what Turncoat is about, I mean, you've taken the webcomic down now, but they can go to Amazon.com and find a copy of Turncoat.
Yeah, I mean, the Kickstarter did ridiculously well. It was our first one, was so surprised, but so flattered as well. And that was for the hardcover copy. We had some shops that wanted to sell the book, so we thought we'd re-release it, but as a soft cover. So it's not to make sure that the people who backed us on Kickstarter had an exclusive thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the soft cover is available. I mean, I don't know if it's still in stores. It is a very, very, very much an indie book, but your comic shop can order it, and I'd always say go with them. But Amazon has it as well. Anywhere good comics are found.
Yes.
The phrase.
Was this the first time that either of you had a Kickstarter campaign, or did one of you at least have experience with Kickstarter previous to Turncoat?
I'd done a previous Kickstarter, but Ryan handled it this time because he's, like I said, he was taking the business reins. I was drawing the book at the time, and I didn't have time to, I would throw images and whatever he needed, but he did really well with it, I think.
Yeah, I had to learn how it worked. Like when I was putting the webcomic together, when we were putting the pages up, I was learning how Kickstarters worked for the duration of the webcomic being up there, including like where to advertise the webcomic to build up readers online. And I read a great book by Jason Brubaker called Unnatural Talent, and that was all about how to monetize webcomics. I think that and a Ryan Brown seminar from Comic Experience, based by Matt Klaus, that was the other thing I watched. And I sort of pieced those two things together, went away and did some of my own research and figured out how the Kickstarter system works. I mean, I'd helped out a few friends with their Kickstarters before, but none of them had done as well as this. And I've helped a few friends with their Kickstarters since, with the stuff I've learned from Turncoat, and they've all done really well. So I think that's what I enjoy about Kickstarter, that if you put in the effort, you can get a lot out of it. The problem is, though, it's not sustainable. Every time you do a Kickstarter, you start again from ground zero. You've got an email list of people, but every single Kickstarter is brand new. Whereas with the direct market, each book, your readers follow you. So that's been my experience so far. Ask me again in a year. Who knows?
Now, have you been able to reach out to the folks that were following the Turncoat webcomic or pledged to the Kickstarter and say, hey, you know what, we've got Void Trip is coming out here soon? Have you been able to maintain some kind of contact with those people who obviously liked your work the first time around?
Yeah, I've been emailing them. Not too much because obviously Void Trip isn't the thing they've followed. But I've said we've got this new book out. If anyone's in New York, come say hi, because me and Klaus did New York Comic Con last month, and a bunch of them been hitting me back by email saying they're going to pick it up. So I've sent out an email, sort of annoyingly calling them the O'Sullivans. And, which is a name I made up myself, but pretended they made up for themselves. So I don't know. No, I think they've been very supportive. Obviously, they helped launch my career and classes. So a lot of them are going to pick up this book, and
it's a very niche book.
They might trade rate. They might trade rate because they bought a trade after having read the webcomic for free. So I don't know.
It's cool. It's a very niche book. So whenever at a con someone comes up and remembers Turncoat, it's always kind of a kick. I mean,
there was a convention recently called the Isle of Wight Comic Con, which is this tiny, tiny island next to England, and the population's really small. And so many people come up to me saying they'd read Turncoat. And I was like, what? So I don't do conventions really, so maybe I should. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of people. So we partnered with, who was it? There was a subscription box service provider, like Loot Crate, but it's called Geekbox, and we did an exclusive cover for them for Turncoat and sold thousands and thousands of copies of it.
Wow.
So that at whatever discount, and now the book's out there in the wild being read by people. So that's how books tend to work. Right?
Well, now, Ryan, you mentioned that you usually don't go to cons. In the coming year, do you guys have any plans on being in a con together to publicize Void Trip or just your work together in general?
I'd like to think we're going to do New York again. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I stayed with Klaus for a week last time. I don't know if I'm still invited. I thought I'd put you on the spot on a recorded podcast.
Well, yeah, do you like screaming babies? I don't know.
I love screaming babies.
Okay.
To be fair, I'd 4 hours sleep each night when I was there, so I think it wouldn't be too different. That was my fault, I completely too much. But yeah, I think we want to do more cons next year. I'm doing Emerald City Con. Might be doing Rose, Heroes Con, a few others. Thought Bubble in the UK. Probably more I'm forgetting. But yeah,
I do.
Busy, Klaus?
Yeah, no, I do Philly every year, and did Chicago last year. I liked it. Might go again this year. The Wizard cons, hopefully New York Comic Con for sure.
Yeah, we should do it. We should do, like when the trade's out. We should try and.
Yeah, man.
I'll be up for that.
It happened on this podcast. You heard it first.
That's right.
All right.
And definitely come to Heroes Con because I'm living in Charlotte now.
Yeah,
I would love to meet you guys.
I'll be there. Yeah, my friend lives there. I have a place to stay. It's a great con.
Yeah. It is. And one of the things I love about Heroes Con is that it's a really nice mix of, I guess, what you could loosely call mainstream creators and indie creators.
Yep.
And so, and it's all comics oriented, right? I mean, there are people who are there who do things other than comics, but you do not, thank God, have much, if any, of an emphasis on TV and film.
No, I think it's like...
No Funko Pops, no.
Yeah, it's like at least 60, 70% artist, creator, writers, and then I think they have like tables that are selling comics. But
right.
Yeah, the media stuff isn't there. It hasn't yet been spoiled.
Yeah, and I hope it never will be.
Yeah, me too.
So, we should also mention again that this first issue of Void Trip will come out next Wednesday. That is November 22nd. And that issue number 2, according to the Image website, will be released on December 27th. And then issue number 3 on January 31st of next year. So you know, this will be a good schedule, and I guess by summer or late spring of next year, when the trade comes out, you can come to Heroes Con and talk about the completed series. Yeah, man. I think the trade's out. I think on May the 30th. So perfect.
Hopefully that will line up well with it.
Do either of you want to tell us where our listeners can find your work individually, like your websites or Twitter or Instagram accounts? In other words, where you can be contacted or where people can find out more information about the work that you do?
I think for me the best place is probably Twitter. I've got a website, but it just directs to Twitter and has done for about 2 years because I can't be able to build it. So yeah, Twitter. Ryan O'Sullivan, at Ryan O'Sullivan. That's my Twitter account. Find me there. That's where I post up all my stuff.
Yeah, I'm Plaid Klaus on all the social networks, and they're pretty much mirrored, so I pretty much post the same thing to all three: Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I think it's all one word, except for Facebook, it's two. But yeah.
Okay, so those venues would be the best ways for us to find out not only what you're currently about to release in terms of Void Trip, but what you're working on perhaps for the future that you can't tell us much about yet.
Absolutely, yep.
We've also got a mailing list, but it's down at the moment. But we'll announce it on our Twitters when it's not. So yeah, it's still the best place to find out.
Well, Ryan, Klaus, I want to thank both of you again for being on the Comics Alternative. This is a great #1 issue, Void Trip, and we recommend that all of our listeners definitely check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, man. It means a lot to hear.
All right, well, it's been
I've
fun.
been a big fan of your podcast for years. So
wow, that's great to hear.
I listened to...
Oh, yeah. Me too, man.
2-parter you did about manga a while ago. That really opened my eyes to a lot of things. So, yeah. Thanks a lot for that, and cheers for finally having me on. I managed to keep my fanboyness to the last minutes of the interview.
No, this is always good. It's great to hear when a creator that we really enjoy and appreciate tells us, like, for instance, on an interview or maybe even in an email, that they've been listening to the Comics Alternative for a while. So that's a great discovery. Thank you.
Yeah, man, keep making good stuff. No worries.
Well, that was great talking with Ryan and Klaus. Obviously, a lot of good stuff coming from there. They put a lot of work into their books clearly, and putting a lot of thought into their books very clearly. It really shows. Even if you didn't know that from having not talked to them beforehand, it's very clear after talking to them, to be sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoyed this first issue of Void Trip. I'm eagerly anticipating how this series is going to play itself out through the next 4 issues. So I'm glad we got to talk with those guys about, some of the background of Turncoat and the process of working together. And also they told us a bit about their work together on Turncoat.
Yeah, and how that's evolved. That's always interesting to hear. That's and I like that they're working together not only creatively but also from a business perspective. We talked a bit there about how they've both got their minds not just on telling good stories, but telling good stories and making sure that those can get out into the marketplace.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's not enough people consider that, and not enough creators consider that, I think.
Right. And, along with what you just said, one of the things that impressed me about that interview with the two of them is that Void Trip as well as Turncoat are both collaborative efforts in the fullest sense. Because, sometimes when we interview creative teams on the podcast, if we ask a story about or ask a question about the story, then the writer will respond, the credited writer. If we ask a question about the art style, then the artist will respond. And regardless of whatever it was that we were asking Klaus and Ryan, both of them had things that they wanted to say about, not only the art, but the process, the story itself, suggesting that these guys really do collaborate and do equal work on everything.
Yeah. Although I think Ryan still holds a little bit of a grudge for Klaus coming up with the name in this case. Void Trip is a really great name. The more and more you think about it, and he really nailed it on that. And I think Ryan's a little pissed at him or jealous or something.
Yeah. Again, we want to thank Ryan and Klaus for taking the time and being on the Comics Alternative. And if you want to find great titles like Void Trip, then definitely check out the website of our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service. In fact, as Sean mentioned at the top of the show, you can pre-order issue number 3 of Void Trip right now at 40% off of the cover price. So definitely get your comics at dcbservice.com. And after you do get your books there, get in touch with us and let us know what you thought about our interview with Ryan and Klaus. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you could leave us a voice message online via SpeakPipe. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way by picking up the phone and dialing 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
And if email is more in your bag, we got email addresses you can send us, obviously. You can get a hold of us at 2guys, that's TWOGUIS, at comicsalternative.com. Or you can email me directly at Sean at comicsalternative.com.
And contact me directly at Derek at comicsalternative.com. You can find us all over social media. We have accounts on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, YouTube, and Slack. You can subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our podcast episodes, as well as the reviews and comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, simply by going to our website, comicsalternative.com. So a lot of ways for people to get in touch with us, Sean.
Yeah, we try and make it easy. Whatever floats your boat, we'll respond that way.
That's right, yeah. And, one of the things I've noticed lately is we've been getting quite a number, relatively speaking, of responses through our YouTube channel.
I had not checked in on that lately.
Yeah, so people who are listening to the Comics Alternative are doing so through YouTube, which is great. We don't have any animation. We're an audio-only podcast, and so if they're okay with either playing the podcast in the back, playing the sound in the background, or looking at their screen and just seeing a static image, then hey, that's fine with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Glad for everybody who's able to support us in any way, whichever way that works for them.
That's right.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And Sean and I will be back soon for the December webcomics episode, but we'll also have more interviews in the days to come, so check back for those episodes. Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Sean, and we'll see you soon.